I've seen governments forget about boards, then start to bring them in partnership. That'd be when you were in, and now they've forgotten about boards again, and we've been just left out of everything. And I would like to know, I've heard you say some things about what you would do as Premier, but we are and want to be partners in all of this rather than just opponents.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders to answer first.
Sure.
I'm trying to keep 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, actually, and it is important to note that when we had this voluntary provincial table of negotiations that you'll know quite well, it really worked when we had a lot of money. And when everyone kind of knew that GDP growth was at 3%, coffers were being filled easily as a government, it was easy to do that. And that happened for 2 negotiations, right, every 4 years. But what happened this last time, 1, communication was not as it should be. I think everyone acknowledges that. 2, the money isn't there. And there was no obligation by any side of the discussion to stay at the table. So, and moreover, the boards weren't there. So I am proposing that the first order of discussion with Sam, when we call Sam, is what does that provincial table have to look like when the money is not free-flowing? Because we got to figure this out, and the boards have to be at the table to know what's even workable at a local level. So I'm glad you asked the question. I spent a lot of time talking to boards when I was the minister. I will say that I wanted help from especially the superintendents of finance to look at how we can stop spending some money in school boards that, you know, like 20 years later, life changes. So tell me that we can find different ways of doing things. Why school boards spend money on advertising, for example. It is the law for kids to go to school, after all. You know, so some things really we can improve with time and focus the money where we want it to be in the classroom. So I think even the provincial government has a role to play in how we do that. Thanks.
Thanks, Senator. I mean, what actually happened in terms of the negotiations, the school boards were essential. In fact, I'll let you know a little secret. Provincial government has no legal right to negotiate. And so what we did was have provincial dialogues. And it was really important because we want to make very clear, you don't run Sarnia schools from Queen's Park. And so we were going on steps. After having the treatment from the Harris government, we raised salaries for trustees, not to any exorbitant levels, but simply to reflect the care and the time that we want people to put in. We want to reflect the fact that this is another kind and another level of governance. But there were some other steps that had to be taken, and somehow that plan went a little bit off track, but that has to come back on track. You know, in fact, the first deal that we got was actually for less than the industrial average. We saved enough money in the first arrangements, and school boards worked with us that we were able to hire 8,000 new teachers within our mandate for the salary settlement. Because, you know, I actually remember going to ETFO and OSSDF meetings and saying, look, which way do you want this? This is either going to be the way you want to see schools, where students are well served, where trustees and Federation representatives are not at war with each other, where they're working together and getting things done. And we facilitated that. So that's really the role that I see for us. And I don't quite recognize, I do understand, and I think Sandra's mentioned this, that there's fiscal imperatives. The fiscal imperative can't be the only imperative. And we would go around creating jobs, whereas one of our main jobs is managing the government better, so that people can see it as a real advantage. It has to be every level of government. And we've got to make sure that we're included in. And that's why I think the renewal of our party is going to be really important, because there has to always be a few strings to pull all of us back. And so I'm hoping that that will happen so that we go back to the job of making school boards a level of government that is respected and that communities look to for at least part of that decision making, and will be accountable for the part that comes to us.